This is an example of a corner pin in action. So we have a basic shot interior of an office, and one of these things is not like the others, even though they all look like they're pinned to that wall. Um, we have an intruder in the form of our panda robots. So you'll see here that this video actually is using a couple of points and a tracker to make it look as if the poster is on the wall. So not just on the wall, but moving in the same perspective as everything else on the wall, as if it were following the surface of the wall. Okay, so we have what's called a four-corner perspective pin in action here, which allows us to use some pretty basic methods. In this case, just drawing a rectangle or tracing a rectangle and putting four dots at each corner. Now, not literally tracing, I just put up a rectangular object and followed it to the corners using marker. I just put some dots on the wall, and they are going to be used as the tracking. So they're going to be tracked, and you'll see that the trackers are just doing the usual thing with their feature regions, search regions. But in this case, the attach points you'll notice have been pushed off so that we don't get the little um, black blotches showing up in the corner of our final result. Okay, so that's where you're going to be moving the attach points so that you can track just within the corners of the poster or where the poster is going to be, but you can actually kind of shove the corners when it's attached off beyond so that the dots are hidden. Okay, so this is a kind of an entry level corner pin because all we need to do is just follow and track our object into the scene. Okay, so I'll take the process from the beginning and I will find that corner office wall video and I'll start a new composition. Okay, so we have our office and I'm going to go through the process of my motion tracking. So I track motion, but rather than specifying how many properties I want to change, I actually go into the track type and I go down to perspective corner pin. That gives me 4 points that I can use. Now the overarching process here is we're going to line up our trackers all the way around first. Be careful you don't move 1 down here and 3 over there and so on. They need to stay in this order: top left, 2 top right, 3 bottom left, 4 bottom right. And we're going to line up our features first, and only then when we've got that done are we going to move our attach points. This is the way you do it because the attach points are very kind of dynamic. So if I was to line up my feature here and move my track point out here, as soon as I start moving the other ones, you'll see that it actually moves the first one. So you get all of your trackers lined up first, and then you line up your attach points where you want them to be. So this is exactly the same process as if you were doing a single or a 2-point track. We go in, this looks slightly, looks a little bit blocky, but that's fine, it's still going to track it. We can see it, and we can see that it is black against very light grey. So give myself enough that it can tell the difference between black and not black, but not so big that it's going to be a little bit messy when it's trying to track. So this one needs to get pulled off up here. Same thing, just big enough to give us a nice clear feature. And search region doesn't need to be too big either. And we're going to just finish off the feature regions, and we can get onto our attach points. Okay, so what I'm going to do is move on to the attach points. Now, there's no real kind of exact way to do this, but all I've done is I've just taken the actual feature region as a bit of a guide, just dragged the attach points down to the corners just to give me something to measure it against. Oops. So when the arrow when the arrow turns white, you can move the attach point. Okay, so I always go back to fit for this so I can see all 4 doing their thing. to see if the tracking is holding up. But always remember you have to go into your options, this corner example, and make sure that adapt feature is clicked. Stop if it goes below 80. And click OK. So you'll notice I've left the search regions quite small. Now, this is just a trial and error thing, but if the search regions are small, you're going to get a quicker track, okay? It might stop. You might go outside of the search region. That's fine. You just go and you make it bigger on that frame, and then you try and track forward again. So you can see this is doing a pretty decent job. It's not going beyond the search regions, and it's giving me a pretty accurate track. Now I have the data I need. I can go about sticking things in here. Now you can try to stick the objects directly on. Okay, that can work. It's a little bit hit and miss. So what I'll do is I'll go here and try that first. I'll find my track and I'll edit my target to the layer with the pandas on it. Click OK and click Apply. Okay. Now that has worked okay. Now, I have noticed in the past that sometimes if things are in a regular shape or if they're not the right dimensions, then they come in and they're slightly offset and they don't follow the track. Okay, now in this case, it seems that the JPEG itself has followed the track nicely. So this could work for us. Okay, but I'm going to give another example in a moment. But before I do, I'm just going to show exactly what has happened here and why it's called a corner pin, a perspective corner pin. So just to go back to the tracking data, we have our attach points, and our attach points in our single and 2-point tracks have attached to the anchor point of our null object, and that has become kind of the anchor that moves and things around. In this case, we have 4 points that are attached to the properties of an effect called a corner pin, and you can see it adds it by default as part of the effect. And what it does is it pins things and it allows you to warp and move the corners of things around. So essentially all that's happening here is the corner of the poster is being warped to match its corners to the attach points via the corner pin effect. So it's pretty low tech. There's no cameras, there's no actual perspective or geometry involved here. It's just hanging each corner via the corner pin onto our dots. And that allows it to look like it's moving in 3D space, but it's actually just attached itself to those 4 points. So that's the corner pin. I'll close that so we're not looking at it. Now, another way that you can go about doing this, in a way that I tend to do it myself, is to take a slightly longer way about it, but the advantages will be obvious when you see it. So I start off with a solid, and changing the color automatically. It usually does that. It does the other way around. So I click OK. Now this just gives me a big old solid filling the window there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to layer down to pre-compose, and that's going to wrap another composition around this solid, and it's going to leave that composition sitting here. But that allows me to click inside and I can put whatever I want in here. So for example, I could put some text. Okay. Scale that up so we can see it. And that's then visible out on my main timeline as part of this composition. Now, the way that I get this into the mix for the tracking is that I instead of pinning a JPEG or a layer, I'm now pinning my pre-comp. And that allows me to pin the pre-comp, but also have access to everything that's inside that pre-comp. Okay, so I can do anything I want in here. I can do animations, I can do a little bit of color grading, I can put in masks and stuff like that. It really is kind of open season for all of the stuff that you can do in here. And that mask on the wrong layer. Anyway, hopefully you get the idea. So it gives you another workspace within your track that you can then track once with the pre-comp and then just pop in anything at all that you want to be in that pre-comp, such as our pandas. So I'll put those in, right click, transform, fit to comp, and now they are being tracked. So it gives me, as I say, one tracked object, the pre-comp, and I can go in and I can change and update whatever I want to in there. Okay, so that's now containing our panda image, but it's actually the pre-comp that's being tracked and not our panda JPEG. So that's the corner perspective pin effect.